Hello, and welcome to our mini documentary. Today, in our documentary, we will be discussing how race, gender, and various physical and mental disabilities can affect one's social status in our society today. We'll be doing that by analyzing various interviews with people in the community and by using various class discussions, videos, and readings in order to help supplement our interviews and information. Without further ado, let's get into our first interview.
Kerry O'Brien. I work in a preschool in Littleton Public Schools. It's an integrated preschool with children with disabilities and without disabilities.
What effect does social class have on your students, or can you notice an effect at all?
Yeah, I can notice the social class. It's a huge effect on our students. We have a population that makes up approximately 40% of our enrollment, and then that with special education, and that has a very diverse socioeconomic overlay. So we see students that are from the lowest incomes to the highest incomes. And sure, it has a huge effect on the students. There's times where their parents are jobless, and that could lead to homelessness. It affects them that the enrollment and attendance numbers are very, very varying because of children moving in and out of district based upon their parents' job status, and that definitely affects everything in the classroom. It's total turmoil for the students, total turmoil for the classes.
Okay. Do you see a disproportional representation of males in special education?
Yes, there is many more males in special education. I think there's a lot of factors for that. First off, I do think that a lot of the disabilities that are the most severe, that parents seek out the most help for, are predominantly affected by males. So they definitely have a higher population. For instance, autism. Autism has a much higher incidence in males than females.
Okay.
That's just one example.
Do you notice gender bias in the classroom when it comes to dress, colors, available jobs, or jobs they want in the future, etc.?
Yeah, and preschool is really not, it's kids talking about what they want to be when they grow up, but there's definitely a gender bias. They keep their, they definitely are more prone to the typical male jobs if they're male, typical female jobs. I think that has a lot to do with the parents rather than the kids, but it's a reality.
How do you feel about the socialization of gender in the school system?
I think that I do think there's huge gender. As I said before, a lot of it has to do with what the parents are telling the kids and how they're being raised, but that's how kids learn. So I do think that the gender bias and socialization of gender in the classroom is, even in preschool, extremely evident. The males are going more towards the typical male jobs, and females are going towards more typical female roles. You see, but there is the instance where you do have with two working parents, where you do see the boys taking on more of the typical female role, which is nice to see because that's life for all of us now. So I think that it varies depending upon also the socioeconomic. When two parents are working, they're going to be better off. So that definitely helps the kids. But once again, then they're in preschool a lot longer and in daycare a lot longer. So it's a double-edged sword.
I'm Mr. Julian, and I'm the group leader for the Boys and Girls Club, ages 5 through 7. I volunteer for Wichita Public Schools pre-K and K programs.
What kind of school do you currently work in?
I work at a school of lower socioeconomic status, predominantly African American and Latino students during the school day.
Class has on your students and at the school as a whole.
Environmental factors such as poverty, single-headed households, incarcerated parents, and lack of resources and staff in the schools needed to help children for that extra support. There's also a lack of parental involvement in reinforcing learning at home. This could be linked to single-headed households and lack of education.
Do you have any examples?
One instance I can think of, I worked with one of my students on their homework for the entirety of the club. This child comes from a low-income background and have worked with them in the past since I've been with Boys and Girls Club. As much as I would like to help this individual on a daily basis, I can't spend that kind of time supporting them due to the number of individuals in each class. The fact is, there's not enough one-on-one work with the students who are struggling academically, and it's hard to spend that kind of time after class due to the number of students in each group.
What steps do you think the school can take to change the negative effects of these differences?
Honestly, I believe it all comes down to the funding and hiring enough staff members. The students that I work with after school need extra help in and outside of the classroom. Dwindling financial resources have had some impacts on schools, while social workers in school settings have been underutilized. Schools and staff should be understanding that mental health is a concern that impacts all individuals, and helping students and parents identifying these problems can and will help prevent any long-term negative effects.
What kind of school, socioeconomic wise and race wise, do you work in?
Socioeconomic wise, I believe we are have a pretty high poverty rate. I don't know the exact statistics, but I want to say that over 60% of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch, which is often used as a kind of a marker in public schools as to how many students they have in low socioeconomic status. Race-wise, we're way predominantly Caucasian, have a few Hispanic students and a few Black students and a few Asian students, but really probably 95% Caucasian.
Okay, great. What effect do you think social class has on your students and the school as a whole, if any at all?
I think social class has some effect on my students, particularly from very low-income families, because often they struggle with a lot of things, and education doesn't always rise to maybe the top of the family's needs and concerns.
Mm-hmm.
If they're having a hard time making ends meet, or there's other issues going on in the family, it kind of all works together sometimes. But so there's that struggle, just that maybe education isn't top priority sometimes in some of my students' families.
Yeah.
It also is kind of an opportunity thing, I think. Some students, they don't try out for cheerleader, for example.
What effect do you think race has on your students and the school as a whole, if any at all? Because it is predominantly white. Do you think that that's a factor at all?
I just wish it was a little more diverse, just so they could get other perspectives.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
What steps do you think the school can take to change the negative effects of these differences?
Well, welcoming more foreign exchange students, for one thing. They wouldn't all be of a different race, but I think that adds to some diversity. Certainly, teaching about diversity, just making sure that students get a chance to talk about issues of race, even though there might not be a lot of other people of color around them.
Mm-hmm.
These are issues that are important to our whole country, and so I hope that those conversations, I think they do. I know we have a couple of, there's an English class of Black literature, I think. Is there still, maybe? And that brings up a lot of good conversational things and topics that need to be talked about.
Right.
So, education in whatever ways we can, I think, and just being open about the races, others, nationalities, as a teaching staff, maybe.
Okay.
What effect do you think social status has on schools and the students?
I think one of the biggest things that social status impacts is a student's background experiences. And what they can already bring to school that helps in their learning, and the types of resources that they have at home, and the types of support that they have from their family.
What effect do you think social status has on the disabilities of students?
I think students who come from more advantaged backgrounds are able to access more medical support, more therapeutic support as well than students who come from lower economic background.
And what are the steps taken to ensure that students with disabilities get the help that they need?
Well, it all starts with a team approach. We start with teams collaborating in professional learning communities. Once everything is exhausted, to try to help students with general education interventions, we then move to the SIT process, our student intervention team, where we bring in more experts. We might bring in a school psychologist, social worker. We continue those interventions, and we have something in Kansas called multi-tiered systems of support, or RTI, where students get extra layers of help depending on what they need. And of course, that's a general education intervention. Once we get to Tier 3, those students then are looked at to go through the evaluation process for special education. So it's definitely a team approach.